So the question we're asking everybody here, and we've done a number of these, is why are you running for office? Why are you running, and why are you the best candidate? We'll start with you.
Yeah, sure. So my name is Ahmad. I'm running because I'm mad as hell at how dysfunctional our government and politics are. I'm running because I've got great solutions for the problems our country faces. I'm running because I want to ban money in politics, because money in politics equals corruption in politics. I am a moderate. I'm a centrist. I want Republicans, conservatives, independents, Democrats, and liberals to vote for me. In the real world, people from different political backgrounds agree on almost 70% of the issues, and I believe in compromise. I believe in good governance, not partisan bickering. I believe in country over party. I want to make the starting pay for teachers $80,000 a year. I want to do massive infrastructure spending to grow the economy and create high-paying jobs, which are desperately needed in Congressional District 17, both in the rural areas and urban areas. I want to legalize, regulate, and tax cannabis. And I've got the greatest Social Security fix in the history of the program. That's why I'm running.
Well, I'm Todd Kent. Thank you for having me here today. I am running because I'm at the point in my life where I have the time and the opportunity to give back. I think we're facing a number of serious issues in our country, and as a Republican, I think we, in a lot of ways, have not addressed these appropriately, and I don't think Congress has, as a whole, not just Republicans. This includes our national debt, Social Security, healthcare cost. So there's big issues that we're facing. There's additional issues, but I have broad experience that covers academics. I worked as a dean in 2 different universities. I've worked in 2 different countries. I've taught American government and the U.S. Constitution to college students for years. I understand the way they think. I've worked in the consulting world, and I've also worked in the nonprofit world, so I have a broad experience. And I think that's what I bring to the table, is the ability to go to Washington and start running from day one. You know, there's a learning curve, but I've been involved in politics a long time, and I think that I have the background and the experience to be a leader in the 435 members of Congress.
We'll start with you.
Okay.
So as you campaign, you travel the district. What are you hearing from voters? What's worrying them? What's on their mind?
Yeah. You know, this district's a little bit unique because you have some population centers. Then you have the Travis County area is it's kind of just a bunch of neighborhoods. But then there's also the rural areas, and what I'm hearing there is healthcare. I was in Cameron last night where they lost their hospital. Rockdale Hospital closed, so if you have a serious illness now you have to go to Temple. Well, this is concerning for families, and I think eventually they're worried that it could cause population decline as you don't have health care in your neighborhood. So rural health care is a big issue among those areas. I think with Baylor and Texas A&M and Waco and College Station, the economies in both cities are doing well. But I think what you're looking toward the future, the availability of research funds, the availability of continuing to offer education. Baylor and Texas A&M have different struggles because one's private and one's public, but I think education plays a tremendous role in those communities, and so they see that as central in what their mission is. I know in Waco there's a need for Baylor to be able to grow its research activities, which also will spur economic development. And then Texas A&M is exactly the same. This is important to remain, a tier 1 university in those areas. So, to me, I think when you talk to older voters, it's health care, it's Social Security, that they're concerned about that. Younger voters continue to say they care about their environment, and then as the Republicans, we haven't talked about that, and I think that's causing us to lose some ground with the younger voters. And we have to change that, and I intend to be different, to reach out and talk about these issues. We don't have all the solutions, but what we can do is begin to talk about and get a conversation going, which is critical for the party if we're going to capture the next generation of voters.
Some similar items. So I have heard about topics on the campaign trail, yes. And simultaneously, I hear a lot about it with my job. So I'm a financial advisor. I've been doing that for almost 2 decades. And so people talk, of course, about their finances. And politics comes up with the topic of money, whether it's retirement, whether it's the economy, whether it's jobs. So I have heard about topics during the campaign, but I've actually heard a lot from just my occupation and interacting with clients when it's actually not in a political setting. Topics about healthcare, yep. Good paying jobs, definitely. There's concerns about Social Security. So all of those are issues. I hear quite a bit about political dysfunction. So those are some of the main topics that come up. And I have solutions for all of those. So on the topic of healthcare, I know that there's quite a few people that, because of where they live, like they could live in a rural area or they may be self-employed, they do not have access to good health coverage. So for folks in that circumstance, I actually want to provide them the access for Medicare. And so my proposal is a Medicare if you want it plan. I do not believe in handouts. I do not believe in freebies. I don't want to do a government mandate. So mine is simply a choice, and there's a premium. So it's for people to have access. They can compare it with their Aetna plan, their Blue Cross plan, their United Healthcare plan. And if they like it, they can get it. And it's not free. There's a premium for it. So it's a way to give people access, provide freedom of choice, but also make sure that it's not just free healthcare. There's not such a thing as free healthcare. So that's one thing for healthcare. When it comes to jobs in the economy, I have a specific proposal on helping out with that. One has to do with massive infrastructure spending, and I have a way to pay for it. The other has to do with high-value research. I want the U.S. to be on the bleeding edge of technology, and in order for us to do that, we need to invest in technologies and industries of the future. So 2 examples of what the U.S. has done in the past is the space race in the 60s. That was high-value research, generated a lot of jobs and industries for decades to come, and the internet. The internet was a high-value research program between the Department of Defense and the university system. So those are all proposals that I have to help out with the job situation. And I've got some also to fix the dysfunction in the political system as well that we can discuss.
You mentioned Waco and College Station, sort of the metro areas in this district, but the district is far-flung, and it also includes over 100,000 Travis County residents.
It does.
How do you serve both the rural, the major metro areas, Waco, Bryan, College Station, and Travis County? Are there commonalities that you're finding between these areas and the people who live there?
Yeah, it's difficult. I mean, and we're just campaigning. I know Congressman Flores has offices in all those areas, but it is, if elected, what I intend to do is I want to go back to the town hall. We have, I think, what we've seen in our political spectrum now, kind of moving away from that, too controversial, too contentious. But I think that to be able to serve these very different communities, we have to be there. We have to be out, and we have to talk to them. Everywhere I go, people are willing to talk. Breakfast this morning in Caldwell, people came up and talked to me and said, "This is what I'm interested in." And I think we as a government, we have to continue to do that. The area in Travis County is very difficult because it's neighborhoods. It's not you can't go to the town square in that area, which is unfortunate, I think. And my guess is the next time that we redistrict, that area will be taken out of the district. I think Austin's growing too fast. It's going to get another congressman, and I think we'll lose it. That being said, they need to be served like everybody else. And it's just, I think the way that the Texas is laid out, it makes it difficult as you configure districts to make it contiguous so that everybody has common interests and common needs. Certainly, Bryan, College Station, and Waco are much more similar than the Travis County area, which because of where they are, and also the universities that kind of form the hub of the town. So it's longer to say that the Travis County district, those people deserve as much representation as anybody else, and I think it's even harder for them to organize. Do you organize around Pflugerville or do you organize around other areas? And I think as a member of Congress, the key is showing up, being there, being present in those areas enough that people can have their concerns heard.
That's a great question. I love that one. Being a moderate helps. So I don't go around bashing people from different political backgrounds. And so, the district is diverse, and that's fine. That's great. So whether somebody lives in one of the rural areas or one of the urban areas, or whether they are conservative or liberal, being a moderate helps because I respect those different political views, and I want to find common ground, and that common ground exists. So yes, there are similarities. Whether somebody lives in one of the urban areas or Waco or the strip that goes through Austin and Pflugerville, or whether they live in a rural area, most people know that our education system is important to have a good economy, to give people a good opportunity. That's one of the reasons why I want to pay teachers more, because they are underworked and overpaid. Our education system is falling behind other countries. We rank 31st in math, 12th in science, and we'll never have the best education system unless we attract and retain the best, highest quality teachers. In order to do that, you got to pay them what they're worth. So whether somebody is in the far-flung parts of the district or not, they agree on that. That's a common part. The other part is one of the reasons why the district is so far-flung is it's gerrymandered. I want to define it because most people that I talk to, they don't know that gerrymandering exists. They don't know what gerrymandering is. So I want to define that for the audience in case anybody doesn't know, not you guys, but the people that read the paper. So it is the process where political parties or politicians use to map out the district boundary or create a district boundary to give them an election advantage. It's been going on for about 200 years. Congressional District 17 is gerrymandered. It's not competitive for a democracy to have gerrymandered districts. So one of the things I want to do is I want to ban gerrymandering. There's ways to get rid of it. You can do proportional representation. You can do an independent redistricting commission. All of those things will help make districts more competitive, make politicians more responsive to the voters rather than having a huge advantage by being an incumbent. So I believe in competition, the free market, and that goes for the process of democracy and having a fully functioning democracy. And I think that will also help the district when it comes to drawing its borders so that the representatives and the voters have similarities, have commonalities, but also have some kind of normal geographic shape to help out with representation.
Did you want
Well, because a congressional district is roughly 750,000 people, it's difficult to draw lines, and that's why we have this slice into Travis County. Also, it's not healthy for the large cities to dominate that process, but it's very difficult to draw lines, and certainly the party in controls the way the lines are drawn. So I'm not sure that gerrymandering, that everything is gerrymandered. And I think what we need to do is find districts where there's common needs and common interest, and I think that's important for citizens. That being said, we hardly have any districts now where it's 52-48. That's just, and that whole process started in 1965. This idea that we can draw districts to our advantage, and it's always been that way.
You mentioned, Mr. Adnan, paying teachers $80,000 a year.
Yeah.
That's largely a function of the state lawmakers.
Sure.
As a U.S. congressman, help make that happen?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So, it's true. Most of the time, the school districts and the states handle pay. However, the federal government in many ways provides money to the states for a variety of different circumstances or functions, or to provide support. And I think education is an imperative for any country to grow, for any developed country to grow. And if we are to compete on the national or on an international stage, then it should be extremely important to make sure that we can have the best education possible. So I don't think any state or school district will mind if the federal government says, here's money to help increase the amount of money that you pay teachers. I don't think the federal government needs to control what the teachers teach, but help with providing support for increasing the pay. Also, there are some school districts across the country that don't have financial resources that some wealthier areas in the country do. There are some states that don't have the same kind of financial resources, or school districts that don't have the same kind of financial resources, and so the federal government has the money to help. And so I think it's important to offer that help, provide that support. And if we don't do that, we can exacerbate issues of income inequality in the future, where people that may live in areas of the country that don't have the money to have a better education system or pay their teachers well, that those people may be stuck in a circle or an area where it's hard for them to break out and get a high-paying job. So it will also help with income inequality too. So I think the federal government should help provide the support. They don't need to do massive dictates, but they can definitely say, here's money so you can get your average starting teacher pay up to something normal. There's a lot of teachers that work 2 jobs, and I think it's preposterous that they have to pay for some of their own school supplies and they can only deduct a portion of it. I just think that's wrong. And in a lot of other cultures and societies, education is respected, teachers are respected. In the U.S., a lot of times they're not. And I think if you pay them actually what they're worth, it will help change the paradigm in our society to where education is valued and teachers are respected. So I think it's extremely important, and I think the federal government can definitely help.
You know, I think I'm all for education reform, but I think it has to come state and local. Every state in the United States has different needs and different problems, and Texas is a difficult because we have so many people from different countries that speak different languages. It's very difficult to education in Texas as compared to like Montana or Utah or somewhere like that. I prefer to allow those solutions to be on the local level. You know, most of our recent presidents have had their own form. I mean, George W. Bush's No Child Left Behind, others. Everybody has a reform effort, but I think it's one size fits all. I think we've seen it doesn't work. It hasn't improved things. I would like to see much more state control and states choosing what's best for them. Let the citizens who are paying for this education through their tax dollars make choices. I think we haven't done that really. We talk about it, but in small ways. We have school choice in some areas, charter schools and others, but on a big way we haven't really allowed local and state education systems to run themselves. We've had too much federal involvement.
We'll start with you on this one. What do you think is the most important reform that Congress could pass next year? And specifically, what is your policy position on that issue?
With education or just any reform?
Any reform.
Yeah. You know, I think the most important thing we could do in the short run for individuals, families, and seniors is to get healthcare costs under control. The average family pays $20,000 in premiums each year. Now, if you work for somebody, they pay part of that. If you're self-employed, you pay it all. Well, that's extremely high with deductibles and co-pays. It's hurting families. And what happens, even though salaries continue to rise, if you also your premiums also go up, your purchasing power doesn't increase over time. So if you look at the research, the Pew Research came out and said that over the last 40 years, our purchasing power hasn't changed, primarily because health insurance premiums have gone up. Now, what can we do about that? Well, for seniors, we can just talk about that for a second. drug prices are too high, but we have the Medicare Modernization Act of 2003, which Congressman Sessions actually signed, which prohibits the government from negotiating with pharmaceutical companies. Well, that's ridiculous. We're insuring 60 million people. We should have the very best pharmaceutical rates. Second, in the safe harbor provision of, I think it's 1987, in our healthcare legislation, it allows healthcare providers to add administrative costs to these functions. Well, most deem that the administrative costs are out of control. In fact, a recent study I read said that probably by half. If we could reduce administrative costs back by half, we would have balanced the budget in 2018, because that's about $500 billion. So in the short run, what we could do to help families and seniors and individuals is talk about health care. Also, we have 71% of our uninsured actually have jobs, but they're in the agriculture, the construction industry, the service industry. That's another area that we need to find solutions for them, catastrophic care in one sense, but also something to provide health care. We need to think differently. We've tied everything to the employer, and if you work on a farm, your employer doesn't have the money to provide your health insurance. So we need to find other options that are affordable for that person to participate in their health care. We need more innovation in that sector. We need to think outside the box a little bit. But the problem is the solutions have been driven by the insurance industry, and I think what we need to do is we need to think broader. We need portability to account for pre-existing conditions. So going forward, I think the status quo doesn't work in healthcare anymore. We need to think harder.
Just a quick follow-up, and then I'll let you answer too.
Sure.
Do you favor keeping the Affordable Care Act?
No.
You mentioned pre-existing conditions.
Well, I think pre-existing conditions are. I've never met a person that didn't care that would want their pre-existing conditions to not be covered. I think, but how do we do it? And I think it's disingenuous to say that in the recent things where President Trump, because he's fighting the Affordable Care Act, doesn't care about pre-existing conditions. It doesn't. There's other ways to do it. I think portability built into the system some way. We can do that. So what I'm saying is, I'm not saying I have all the answers. I'm just saying we're not approaching that correctly, and the Affordable Care Act is not the only mechanism. But there are certain things that we need to talk about. I think pre-existing conditions is incredibly important. It's expensive though. See, this is one of those areas. This is exactly like Social Security. All the solutions, in some ways, are painful and distasteful because they're extremely expensive, and so that's why I think we have to have more the market involved, so that we can drive down. We can have more competition. We can drive down prices, because it's very expensive to do everything that everybody wants. I mean, you have to admit, the Affordable Care Act comes in. President Obama said that the costs are going to go down. Actually, everybody's premiums went up, because as you give more, you have to pay for it. And I haven't met anybody who said that their premiums have gone down in the course of this campaign. So this is not something that we can continue to delay, because the problems get bigger, especially as our nation gets older.
Same question, most important piece of legislation that Congress can pass next year, and
Yeah.
how would you address it?
Yeah, so there's a lot of things that I think are important, but one of the things that I think connects a lot of them is money in politics. Like I mentioned before, I think money in politics equals corruption in politics. I think money in politics creates a conflict of interest for politicians, where they may take care of their donors more than their voters. And so I think that if voters want to drain the swamp, I think that if voters want lower prescription drug prices, I think that if we want to have less government spending, I think that if we want to have a cleaner, simpler tax code that doesn't have a lot of giveaways to special interests. You have to ban money in politics and take that conflict of interest away from politicians, right? A lot of them really care about getting elected or reelected, and that may drive them more than good policy. So I think it's good to get rid of that conflict of interest, and you could actually address a lot of other problems that exist. So I think that's actually a big issue because it has tentacles that reach out to other important topics that people do care about. Todd mentioned a very nice thing about the prescription drug prices, and I agree with that proposal. Medicare is not allowed to negotiate drug prices. That is true. You can get the same drug at the VA for 40% cheaper than you can get at Medicare, and that's because the VA is allowed to negotiate drug prices and Medicare is not. So that would be a huge benefit, not only to seniors, but that would ripple across the system to where it would actually save a lot of people money for their prescription drug costs. And it would actually save Medicare a good amount of money too. So that would help improve the viability of Medicare. You were talking a little bit about Obamacare, so I want to jump in on that a little bit. There are some parts of Obamacare that I actually do like. The pre-existing conditions, yes. There's also the ban on lifetime and annual benefits that Obamacare put in place. That's very good. There's premium subsidies to help people at the lower income levels afford their premiums. Those are all very positive things. So I am not in favor of repealing Obamacare. I'm in favor of reforming the 3 items that it is deficient in. One is cost containment issues, one is high deductibles, and then subsidy cliff. That's right. That's the other issue that exists with Obamacare. So I think it has a lot of good things that it put in place, but nothing is perfect. I think reform is needed, and it would be good to address those 3 weaknesses that exist in Obamacare right on time.
You mentioned banning money in politics.
Yeah.
You mean banning corporate donations?
Ideally, I want to ban all of it. I want to do straight up, no contributions for money, just do pure publicly financed elections. That would be the best way to go. That would be the strongest way to get the influence of money out. However, if there wasn't a way to go all the way out, which there is, but at least doing some reform when it comes to doing like the clean election program, the matching funds program, the anonymous donor program, doing some of those would at least help curtail the influence of money, but the conflict of interest would still persist. So something is better than nothing, so I wouldn't mind doing some of those programs to help reduce the influence. But no, ideally, I want to ban money in politics entirely, do publicly financed elections. That way, politicians do not have that influence at all.
One area where people talk about the influence of money in politics is the NRA and gun reforms and gun violence. Can you all talk about your positions on gun violence, what laws you might or might not support in the way of reforms, and whether they're needed or not? I'll start with you.
Yeah, sure. So 2 parts. I do respect the Second Amendment. I don't want to take away anybody's guns. However, currently, the way that the laws are written, if somebody is on the terrorist no-fly list, if somebody is a convicted criminal, if somebody is a convicted domestic abuser, they still can get guns through certain transactions. And so I do want to prohibit those transactions so that those bad actors can't get guns. So it doesn't affect people that legally have the right to own guns. It affects people that shouldn't get guns. So that's the proposal that I have. And then I also want to help improve the mental health care to address people that have mental illnesses or need some mental health. And that should also help with gun violence too.
Yeah, I'm a big supporter of the Second Amendment, and I think it was Heller versus the District of Columbia, where the Supreme Court reconfirmed that or reaffirmed that. And I agree with Ahmed that the key to stop gun violence is not try to take in the 300 million guns that are out there in the world today. It's to deal with mental health issues. If you look at almost every violent act, there's a mental health component to it or a family component. That's where we can make the biggest progress. I think it's. I don't agree with these programs. You turn in the guns, and there's still hundreds of millions of guns out there. I don't think that's where we're going to make progress in this country. I think we will make progress if we can put more effort into community mental health and dealing with community family issues. That's where I think we can stop the gun violence. So, that being said, I think Congress. The congressional role is not to decide whether or not we can have private ownership of guns. Can look at what are provisions that we can implement that makes us safer. And so I would encourage, let's focus on mental health, because that's where if you look at most of our mass shootings with guns, but also with other weapons, there's a mental health component to that.
I wanted to ask you about your positions on immigration reform, border security. Thoughts on that? We'll start with you.
Yeah.
3 minutes.
It's a national security issue when we don't know who's coming into our country. So right now, I think by most accounts, there's 15 million illegal immigrants here. So we need to, especially in Texas, we need to know who's coming into our country. So that being, I would support efforts, human intelligence, technological help, but also a barrier, a wall in certain areas to prevent that. What we have, what's unique in Texas, is the drug cartels are now come across, are on the border, coming across the border, even up to my people tell me up to 30 miles in the border where they have influence. Well, that's a security issue, a national security issue for our country. So when I think on our border, I would support stopping that so we know who's coming across. I am for reform. I am for immigration reform. We have people here who are here illegally. We all know that. What we do is we need to solve their status. We need to figure out something for those people so they don't hide. This morning at breakfast, a person met me in the restaurant and said, I drive a bus, and he goes, many of the people that are on my bus are illegals and they have to hide. Well, we need to do something in the country to fix their status. I'm in favor of creating a guest worker program that's tied to employment, that allows people to be part of the process. Now, this isn't a citizenship, this is a guest worker. I use this example in a forum, and some mistake what I said. I've been a guest worker twice in 2 different countries, where my being in that country was related to my having a job. And when I left that job, I had to leave the country, once in Middle East and once in Korea. And I use that. That's not exactly the same situation as an illegal immigrant here or alien in the United States and here, but it's the same principle that you're here because you're working. Somebody wants to pay you, and that becomes value. It helps what we're doing in this country. So I think we need to solve the status of the 15 million or so that are here, and then we need to protect our borders so we know who's coming in. It's more and more of a national security issue now that the cartels have become so strong. They're well funded, they're well armed, they have more money than many countries in the world, and so we have to consider that as a serious issue, especially in Texas.
Can I just jump in and ask
Yeah.
about DACA
Yeah.
folks? I mean,
My feeling is that President Obama overstepped his bounds constitutionally, did something that was illegal by the DACA program. That being said, from a humanitarian perspective, I think they came in good faith. We need to allow them to stay. We need to there's 700 to 900,000, dreamers, as we call them. But I think President Trump is right to stop the program, that we need to end it and move forward. But and I think this is a very important issue. So many things that we see that President Obama did, President Trump reversing them. It's because Congress isn't able to get things done, and so presidents now are bypassing Congress with executive orders. And then when President Trump leaves, the next president will probably reverse some of his. So I think we need more leadership in Congress and to deal with some of these issues.
I want comprehensive immigration reform. And that involves a couple of different components. I do want to secure the border, and I do want to embrace legal immigration. Securing the border, I do want the federal government to provide more money to hire more Border Patrol agents and to use technology, cameras, robots, drones to help secure the border. I do not believe and I do not support building a physical wall. I want to build a technology virtual wall. I think that is much more effective, much faster to build, cheaper to build, and it doesn't have eminent domain issues with property rights. So I think that's the way to secure the border. And then I want us to embrace legal immigration. I want us to have more money for caseworkers and judges to process legal immigration and asylum cases. That way we do not have this massive backlog, so that when people fulfill the criteria where they are allowed to come to the country legally, that they can. And that way they can start working, they could start contributing, paying taxes. So legal immigration is a good thing. And if we have that process moving faster, we won't have the children separated from their families at the border, which I thought is horrible. So it helps address those things. I do want to reform the process so we can have temporary work visas and permanent work visas to help grow the economy. There's also, with comprehensive immigration reform, you have more people paying into the system, so it'll actually help reduce the deficit and actually help shore up Social Security. So some of the finances for the country will also be improved. The last thing I want to mention is for any developed country on planet Earth, you need to have population growth to help grow the economy. That is one of the main components to grow the economy. And it's actually a phenomena across countries that as countries get wealthier, their population growth slows because their family size shrinks. So the best way for any developed country to have a decent level of population growth, which directly correlates to economic growth, is through immigration. So we also should embrace immigration to help out with that main factor for economic growth.
You mentioned comprehensive immigration reform.
Yeah.
Does that also include a pathway to citizenship?
Yes. Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. And that goes to the DACA question. I do want a pathway to citizenship for the folks that are affected by the DACA program.
Okay. Any other questions?
And for the folks that are here illegally, I want to do a pathway to citizenship for them so they can actually come out from the shadows and so they can actually start paying into the system. Right now they're earning money, they don't have to pay any taxes. I'd rather give them a pathway to citizenship so they can actually pay taxes while they're working, and that'll help shore up the country's finances.
I've been asking everybody about impeachment. If you were in Congress this current term, you would have faced that vote in the House. How would you have voted on the 2 articles of impeachment?
Who's going for it?
Let's start with Mr.
All right, great. I appreciate you asking the question, actually. I would have voted for it. And it's not just because of those 2 articles. I remember in the Mueller report, he mentioned that there was 10 potential cases of obstruction of justice. And I remember they interviewed Mueller, and he said he would have said that the president was innocent if he thought so, but he didn't say the president was innocent. So does that mean he thought the president was guilty? And then I remember in Helsinki, the president took the side of Putin over his own country's intelligence community. I thought that was wrong. And then obviously with the whole Ukraine thing, he asked a foreign country to investigate a U.S. citizen. I don't think that's right. I think you have the U.S. Department of Justice and U.S. legal system investigate U.S. citizens. And then, was it the Government Accountability Office said that what the president did violated federal law? So all those things, yeah, I would have voted for it.
You know, the impeachment was all about Ukraine. There was nothing about Russia, about the Mueller report.
That's
you know,
true. That's true.
You know, if the Democrats wanted to have a fair impeachment, the House, what happened in the House should not have been in the Intelligence Committee. It should have been an open process. It should have had many more witnesses. It was a very closed process. I would have voted against it. I think they, in the end, they did not charge him with any crimes. They brought 2 charges. So the short answer is I would have voted against it. I think that impeachment of a president should be extremely transparent, and it wasn't in the House. There were 17 witnesses that the Democrats in leadership control. Second of all, we have an election in 10 months, and I'm driving in today, and they're talking about our current congressman saying he's hearing rumblings they're going to start the process again. You know, I think we're at the point if there's not a crime committed, then we need to have an election, and that'll determine, and then we'll move forward from there. But I would have voted against it, to answer your question.
Can I add something really quick to that?
Sure.
I do agree that it would have been the process. Obviously, is definitely a partisan process, and it's true the Mueller stuff wasn't part of the impeachment piece. The partisan stuff really definitely bothers me, especially somebody that's much more moderate. I believe in country over party. The partisan level is so high. I think that if Trump was a Democrat, I think the Republicans would have definitely gone for impeaching him, and I think the Democrats would have been saying, no, he just did some stuff that's wrong, but it doesn't rise to the level of impeachment. And so I think that it's unfortunate that partisan politics has gotten that severe. So I wish that the political system was more functional to where there wasn't as much partisanship as there is now.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look through history, there's always been partisanship, and there always will. But they used to shoot each other, you know. And so I think we do have lots of partisanship, but I'm not sure it's worse than it was even at the start of our nation. But you know, we have competing ideas. We have citizens out there that have different wants and desires. That's part of the process. And I don't think we're ever going to be able to eliminate that. I think what we can do, I do think we need to be more civil. Yeah. I saw a poll the other day, 74% of voters think that we've lost civility and it's hurt our country. Now, how does that work out when you have contentious Democrats and contentious Republicans? But I think we need to work towards that. We need to be able to solve problems. We all agree pretty much what the problems are. We disagree on the solutions, but we can work through that. I think we have to be better leaders and kind of ratchet back the contentiousness that we see there. I think what we've seen over the last few weeks is amazing.
Yeah, I agree with that. The civility is definitely missing, and it'd be good for leaders to actually behave in a more civil way. That's correct.
Senator Romney is getting a lot of pushback from people in his own party.
I'm sure I will after my answer too.
Well, that was my question. Is I wondered if you brought this up at a forum or something, and have you gotten any feedback?
Yeah, no, good question. So it actually hasn't come up in the forums. I thought that it may, but it's actually come up not in a political setting, but it's come up in meetings that I've had with clients. And it's been surprising because many of them are Republicans or conservatives. And so that's just surprising. I don't know why their voices don't show up either in the political process or no offense to you guys, but in news, I've never really seen people say the stuff that some clients have told me, and maybe it's because it's private, and so it's much easier to say those things in private than it is in public. So I don't know. I know that Romney is getting a lot of flack. I'm sure I will as well. I don't know what the repercussions of it are, but frankly, I'm not here to pander. And so I would rather be straight. And if somebody likes the solutions that I have, the views that I have, great, I want their vote. And if they don't, they do have a lot of other good qualified candidates that they can vote for. Todd is awesome. So, but I don't want to just pander. I know what a lot of Republican primary voters want to hear, but I don't think that's the role of a leader. I don't think that's what politicians should do. I think that they should talk about the solutions, make a stand, and try not to be afraid. So I don't mind walking to the beat of my own drum.
Go ahead, did you want to say something?
Well, I was going to talk about the whole concept of leadership. Did you have a question for, or? Yeah, we talk a lot about, on the campaign trail, everybody talks about being a leader, and I'm going to be a leader when I get there. If you, in a two-year session or congressional session, about 11,000 bills are filed. 5% of those bills will actually get a meaningful vote, and 1% will become law. So really, if you think about those numbers, what leadership actually means is who can go in there, build a coalition of others that are like-minded, work with others, and try, maybe in our divided government we have now, bring some from the other side of the aisle to pass a bill. No, in the House especially, no individual has that much power. It's so diverse. So leadership really is who can build coalitions, who can change a mind or two, who can work and build those groups that can attack a problem. Most of our great legislation we've had over time has been bipartisan, where you know everybody's. My feeling is everybody's district needs healthcare reform of some sort. So those are areas so leadership is not an individual standing up and saying what we need to do. It's that person who can work and solve problems even in the midst of differing opinions. And so, go ahead.
Pete Sessions, is the front runner in the race just by dint of name recognition and the amount of money he's raised. I want to give you a chance to tell voters in the Republican primary or in your district in general why you think he's not the right person to represent the district.
Who do you want to go first?
I think I started with
You-
you last time. So
yeah.
you can,
You know, I've got to know Pete Sessions over the last couple of weeks and found him to be a nice guy. I have a couple questions. One is, why would District 17 think that we need somebody who's represented two other districts in the past now to come be our congressman? I think we have a lot of talent within District 17. I think he's been there by 22 years. During the 22 years that he was there, the Republicans were in the majority 18 of those 22 years. And during that 22 years, our deficit increased by $10 trillion. Now, that's not just his fault. It's the Republicans' fault. It's the Democrats' fault, and it's whoever the president. Everybody shares in that problem. But what I'm saying is, I think we need some new people. We need somebody from District 17, and if you listen to him, he's a very smart guy. He's been in the closest levels of government, but we haven't solved a lot of the problems that we're still talking about today during those 22 years. And I think we need to send some other people with broad experience to attack these problems.
Yeah, so, Pete is a nice guy. I like him. I like talking to him. He's got a tremendous amount of experience. Those are all assets, for sure. The reason why I think that I'm a better choice is I think my solutions are better. I don't recall hearing a solution from him about education. I think my solution on paying teachers more is better. I don't know what his stance is on cannabis. I want to legalize, regulate, and tax it. Actually, that's how I pay for the teacher raise. So I don't know what his stance is. I think he's against it, but I don't know. Maybe that's changed. I don't know what his healthcare solution is, but my Medicare, if you want it plan, I think is much better. I don't know if he wants to let Medicare negotiate drug prices. I do. I think that's a better plan. I know what his Social Security plan is, and it's good that he put a proposal out there. Mine is way better than his. Hopefully you guys ask about it, otherwise I'm going to mention it if you don't. I don't know exactly what his plan is for income inequality, but I've got a 5-step plan for mine that includes infrastructure, high-value research, the teacher pay, the Social Security reform, and one of the ways that I actually pay for the infrastructure and the high-value research is for people that make over $1 million a year. I want to increase their tax rate by 2%. And that's the money that I use for the infrastructure and the high-value research. So I don't know if he has a plan like that or not, but I like my solutions more. That's why I think I'm a better candidate.
Just a quick follow-up question. Why aren't you running as a Democrat?
Well, I'm a moderate, so I think that my views go across a lot of the party lines. So I do believe in low taxes. So the way that I do that is actually through my Social Security proposal. I do believe in small government. I have a big spending cut in place. And one of the reasons why I ran is because the two presidents that I really look up to over the past 100 years, one is Dwight Eisenhower, which I've quoted on my website and is one of the reasons for my solutions, and the other one is George W. Bush. So those two have influenced how I'm running. Those two have influenced the kind of candidate I am. Those two have influenced a little bit of my proposals. So that's one of the main reasons. I actually think I'm where the Republican Party should be. So is paying teachers more a Democrat issue or a Republican issue? I don't know. And frankly, I don't care. I think it's a country issue. And is infrastructure a Democrat issue or a Republican issue? I don't know. It doesn't matter to me. I'm not really that partisan. My healthcare proposal about the Medicare, if you want it, I've had Republicans come up to me saying they want single-payer universal healthcare. I'm not doing that. So I think that the variety of what the country needs cannot be condensed down into liberal or conservative or Republican or Democrat. I think people are a lot more complex. They're a lot more open to compromise. They agree on a lot of the issues. And so to me, I feel quite at home with the Republican Party. It's influenced a lot of the views that I have. I've enjoyed speaking with my colleagues. I respect a lot of their views, agree with them in many cases, but to me that's not as important as the solutions. I pick my solutions based on what I think is good for the country, and it doesn't matter to me if one political party or another likes them more than the other. I think that's what's needed for the country, and that's more important to me.
Any other questions?
Thanks for boosting up the AC.
It's chilly in here.
Other questions?
That's what we have.
Well, I want to talk about Social Security really quick then.
So let me ask this, just pulling this question out of the ether. What's the fix for Social Security?
Yeah, bingo. Here you go. So the clock is off, but I'll do it pretty fast. Okay, so this is all you need to do to solve Social Security. For everybody under the age of 40, you increase Social Security eligibility age by 1 year. For everybody under the age of 20, you increase Social Security eligibility by 2 years. Thereafter, you increase Social Security eligibility age based on average life expectancy. So you basically increase the eligibility age based on people living longer. That is actually all that's needed to address its financial situation, and it does not affect people that are close to receiving it now or are receiving benefits. However, the other big kicker for Social Security, which hardly anybody knows, is there's the tax that you pay into Social Security. It's 6.2%. Up to an income limit, it's approximately $140,000. So what that means is if you make 50,000, which is the average income for Congressional District 17, if you make 50,000, 6.2% of your paycheck goes into Social Security. If you make $1 million, you actually only pay 0.9% because of the income cap. So what I want to do, because that's horribly unfair that somebody that's making 50 pays 6.2, somebody who makes $1 million pays only 0.9. What I want to do is I want to drop the rate, the tax rate, to 3% from 6.2 and remove the income limit. That way everybody pays the same amount of 3%, and what it does is it creates a massive tax cut for the middle class, the working class, and the poor. And that's my Social Security solution.
Just quickly on Social Security, I feel like in government, whether it's the VA or Social Security, we need to keep our promises. I started as an employee years ago. I've been paying my 6.2% according to the rules, and we need to not change the rules. In fact, the Constitution talks about ex post facto laws, and I think this is in a way where if we're changing the rules, that's what we hear. The problem with Social Security, all the solutions are distasteful. They're going to be painful for everybody because, if we're going to be out of according to the website, on Social Security website, we're going to be out of money in 2037. So something has to be done. When George Bush tried to privatize Social Security back in his administration, it was a $4 trillion cost then. We only bring in $3.5 trillion in tax money right now. Now that cost is probably 10 to 15 trillion. It's probably way beyond that. The point is, I think what we need to do is we don't need to raise taxes. We don't need to, but what we need to do is we're going to have to the cost of living adjustments are going to have to be ratcheted back. So that way everybody that's paying in gets money. It may not grow as fast. And we also need to encourage people to find private means of also supplementing their income. I don't like taking a program that hundreds of millions of people have paid into, and we change the rules after the fact. I think that's wrong. I think it sends a bad signal when our government promises one thing and then we go back and do something else. So I think we need to find a way to make it solvent without raising taxes, and I think the only way you can do that is through cutting back on the increases over time. And then, as everybody, because there was no promise there. Those are based on tables created by economists in our government. And it's the deflator table, that's what they call it. And I think we need to constantly look at that to see what's happening. But we need to keep our promises in Social Security. If you look at almost all the Democrats want to raise the Social Security tax from 6.2 for an individual. And they also want to means test. Well, again, I think that's you can means test other things, but Social Security is everybody's paying in. So I think that again is punishing one group for the benefit of another, and I don't think we should do that. I think we should keep our promises.